Dispatches by Michael Herr. First edition, 1977. Chapter, Colleagues. It was a Marine, and as soon as I saw him, I realized that I'd seen him before, a minute or so ago, standing on the edge of the clearing, staring at us as we got ourselves ready to leave. He'd been with a lot of other Marines there, but I'd seen him much more distinctly than the others without realizing it or admitting it. The others had been looking at us too, with amusement or curiosity or envy. We were splitting, casualties and correspondents this way out. We were going to Da Nang. They were all more or less friendly, but this one was different. I'd seen it, known it, and passed it over, but not really. He was walking by us now. I saw that he had a deep, running blister that seemed to have opened and eaten away much of his lower lip. That wasn't the thing that had made him stand out before, though. If I'd noticed it at all, it might have made him seem a little more wretched than the others, but nothing more. He stopped for a second and looked at us, and he smiled some terrifying, evil smile. His look turned now to the purest hatred. "You fucking guys," he said. "You guys are crazy." There was the most awful urgency to the way he said it. He was still glaring. I expected him to raise a finger and touch each of us with destruction and decay. And I realized that after all this time, the war still offered at least one thing that I had to turn my eyes from. I had seen it before and hoped never to see it again. I had misunderstood it and been hurt by it. I thought I had finally worked it out for good, and I was looking at it now, knowing what it meant and feeling as helpless under it this last time as I had the first. All right, yes, it had been a groove being a war correspondent, hanging out with the grunts and getting close to the war, touching it, losing yourself in it, and trying yourself against it. I had always wanted that, never mind why. It had just been a thing of mine, the way this movie is a thing of mine, and I'd done it. I was in many ways brother to these poor, tired grunts. I knew what they knew now. I'd done it, and it was really something. Everywhere I'd gone, there had always been Marines or soldiers who would tell me what the Avenger had told Krinsky. "You're all right, man. You guys are cool. You got balls." They didn't always know what to think about you or what to say to you. They'd sometimes call you sir until you had to beg them to stop. They'd sense the insanity of your position as terrified volunteer reporter, and it would seize them with the giggles and even respect. If they dug you, they always saw that you knew that, and when you choppered out, they'd say goodbye, wish you luck. They'd even thank you, some of them, and what could you say to that? And always, they would ask you with an emotion whose intensity would shock you to please tell it, because they really did have the feeling that it wasn't being told for them, that they were going through all of this, and that somehow no one back in the world knew about it. They may have been a bunch of dumb, brutal killer kids. A lot of correspondents privately felt that, but they were smart enough to know that much. There was a Marine in Way who would come after me as I walked toward the truck that would take me to the airstrip. He'd been locked in that horror for nearly 2 weeks while I'd shuttled in and out for 2 or 3 days at a time. We knew each other by now, and when he caught up with me, he grabbed my sleeve so violently that I thought he was going to accuse me, or worse, try to stop me from going. His face was all but blank with exhaustion, but he had enough feeling left to say, "Okay, man, you go on out of here, you cocksucker, but I mean it, you tell it, man, if you don't tell it." What a time they were having there. It had all broken down. One battalion had taken 60% casualties. All the original NCOs were gone. The grunts were telling their officers to go die, to go fuck themselves, to go find some other fools to run up those streets a while. It was no place where I'd have to tell anyone not to call me sir. They understood that. They understood a lot more than I did. But nobody hated me there, not even when I was leaving. 3 days later, I came back, and the fighting had dropped off. The casualties were down to nothing, and the same Marine flashed me a victory sign that had nothing to do with the Marine Corps, or the fading battle, or the American flag that had gone up on the Citadel's south wall the day before. He slapped me on the back and poured me a drink from a bottle he found in one of the hooches somewhere. Even the ones who preferred not to be in your company, who despised what your work required, or felt that you took your living from their deaths, who believed that all of us were traitors and liars and the creepiest kinds of parasites, even they would cut back at the last and make their one concession to what there was in us that we ourselves love most. I gotta give it to you, you guys got balls. Maybe they meant just that, nothing more. We had our resources, we made enough out of that to keep us going, turning the most grudging admissions into decorations for valor, making it all right again. But there was often that bad, bad moment to recall, the look that made you look away, and in its hateful way, it was the purest single thing I'd ever known. There was no wonder left in it anywhere, no amusement. It came out of nothing so messy as morality or prejudice. It had no motive, no conscious source. You could feel it coming out to you from under a poncho hood, or see it in a wounded soldier staring up at you from a chopper floor, from men who were very scared or who had just lost a friend, from some suffering apparition of a grunt whose lip had been torn open by the sun, who just couldn't make it in that heat. At first, I got it all mixed up. I didn't understand, and I felt sorry for myself, misjudged. Well, fuck you too, I'd think. Could have been me just as easily. I take chances too, can't you see that? And then I realized that was exactly what it was all about. It explained itself as easily as that, another of the war's dark revelations. They weren't judging me, they weren't reproaching me, they didn't even mind me, not in any personal way. They only hated me. Hated me the way you'd hate any hopeless fool who would put himself through this thing when he had choices. Any fool who had no more need of his life than to play with it in this way. You guys are crazy, that Marine had said. And I know that when we flew off Mutter's Ridge that afternoon, he stood there for a long time and watched us out of sight, with the same native loathing he'd shown us before, turning finally to whoever was around, saying it maybe to himself, getting out what I'd actually heard said once, when a jeep load of correspondents had just driven away, leaving me there alone, one rifleman turning to another and giving us all his hard, cold wish. Those fucking guys, he'd said, I hope they die. Dispatches, Michael Herr.